Hi, so I'm back at the garage this morning after yesterday's ride. First serious ride on my 1951 Bantam proof of concept green laner. Bit of history of why I'm doing this to this bike. I have more than 8 Bantams. This is my earliest one at 1951, and around the Cambridge-Norfolk border where I live there are many green lanes, and frankly those that own more than 2 or 3 bikes will realize you can't ride all of the bikes all of the time. So this bike came around through wanting to ride those byways and byways open to all traffic and green lanes. So after yesterday's first serious ride, I've got a list as long as my arm to work through some of the tweaks, some of the things that I'd not quite finished. Embarrassingly, confession time was that I ran yesterday's green lane ride on a workshop fuel tank, and basically, for those that do know or may not be familiar with the term, it's essentially a bucket filled with petrol, and considering I wasn't quite familiar with the telemetry and the handling on this bike, that was extremely foolish. So we're going to remove that today and rewire the Bantam fuel tank. The 626 Mark 1 concentric carburetor on this bike is a bit of an unknown to me. And what do I mean by that? I'm fortunate that I've got garages full of spares of all British bikes, and this 626, while the right spec, the 626, something's not quite right with it, and the fastest way for me to address it is that I've got a nearly new 626 Mark 1 concentric. So I'm going to pop it on, and then what we'll do, we'll compare the two internally and see what's going on with this one. We're going to check the timing on the bike, and then we're going to move on to putting some of the covers on, and I will take a very close look engineeringly at this very temporary high-level big bore proof of concept exhaust. I think, you know, while it held up yesterday when I was riding, that actually it needs some more thinking about, which is disappointing, but you know, isn't that what concept means? Proof of concept. This is the second iteration of me attempting to get a big bore, larger diameter Bantam high-rise pipe on one of my BSAs, so it is going to be trial and error. You'll have heard me talk about camera mounts, and you'll have heard me talk about filming. You can see them here. I use a RAM, RAM style of mounts. I think there are about 8 on this bike to cover off all of the different camera angles. For those that follow me, for those that follow me on social media, Instagram, TikTok and YouTube, I do enjoy fitting cameras, whether they're GoPros or Insta360s, or even my iPhone, or even sound. This one was specifically mounted here to try to separate on one of the channels the audio generated by the 2 strokes so that I could mix that into the video. Slightly cheated in a way, in the respect that I fitted under seat springs. I simply ran out of time. For those that saw an earlier video, I've just come back from Somerset, and my 1959 BSA C15 certainly needs some attention. After that, I've got my son's bike to do, which is basically an oil and plug change, filter change. She's been in a garage for close to 15 years. So with the upcoming good weather in the UK, my little workshop come garage is going to be extremely busy. Let's crack on with some of those jobs that need doing this morning. Okay, so let's get this carburetor off. The velocity stack simply unscrews on the thread. It's quite a fine thread actually. You've got to be careful that you don't cross threader. Right, 1/4 inch Whitworth typically picks these off, and then crikey, that was loose, wasn't it? That won't help. And then basically I've got a new 626 to pop on her. You've got to be careful with carburetors. A lot of people talk about re-sleeving them, and I got to be honest, another confession, that's the second confession in the same video. I spent more on stay-up kits, gaskets, jets, main jets, needle valves, holders, than this carburettor was probably worth. But I think in today's age of you know, recycling, trying to make it good, and I think it comes, doesn't it, as part of the DNA of loving these old English motorcycles, of trying to fix things when actually they're worn, and it makes no economic sense at all to try to bodge together worn out components. But the slide was good, the bore looked good. It's just going to take some close inspections to work out what's actually causing the poor starting. I suspect it's this carburettor. For those that don't realise, although the BSA Bantam is a two-stroke motorcycle, both the D14 and the B175 had a 4-stroke carburettor, and I suspect, looking down the Venturi, is that this is actually a 2-stroke carburettor. So I don't know why, but I felt I had to leave the concentric carburettor that's giving me a little bit of challenge in the foreground of this picture, because people would think, hey, hang on a minute here, all Cluffy's done is swap like for like. But let me reassure you that actually this carburettor that comes off patina, which is my 1969 B175, is a well-proven 626 Mark 1 concentric carburettor from Amal. While I'm just screwing this in, you can see in the foreground there the multi-block connectors that I've used to integrate the Bones CDI system within the charging loom. It is a job to do. I've wrestled with the idea of removing all lights except for the brake light, and of course this as an air horn, being a D1 and not an electrical horn. I've wrestled many times with the idea that I would remove the headlamp. Why would I have an incredibly expensive headlamp shell and switch gear on a bike that for 90% of the time is trailered to the green lanes and obviously doesn't require any lighting? And you know, I've even gone as far as thinking, well, you know, in inclement weather would I put my light on? But you know, if I came across a horse rider or a dog walker, would it create anxiety for that animal seeing a bright headlamp when actually there's no legal requirement for my bike when on private and byways to have a working headlight? So that's something that needs some thought about, and it would really simplify the wiring. One of the other things, and again this is temporary, I can hear you all saying, Cluffy, what about the fuel clip? Well, the wire, the piping I use is extremely malleable. It's not what I would say would be permanent fuel pipe. Although I've got a gauze filter here and I have a filter at this end. I always like an inline filter because history shows me that no matter how many filters you have, and no matter how good your internal tank lining is or the finish on your tank, you always get a few bits of grime. And for those that have cleaned one of these concentrics, you'll realize that they have a 90-degree bend in them, and they're a real sod of a job to clear if they get blocked. So for the sake of a couple of quid for a filters, I don't think you can have too many filters. Having said that, I have, like most people, tried to penny pinch in the past and bought cheap filters, and they actually, in my view, for the larger engines, the D14 B175, my 250s and my 400s, do appear to restrain the fuel flow. And these bikes don't often run on full throttle, but when they do, you do need an adequate fuel supply. So I've learnt to my cost not to scrimp on fuel filters. Another point to raise is that this is a Premier class Amal carburettor from Berlin Fuels. What does that give me? It gives me a longer tickle stick so that I don't end up with the old petrol smelling finger, and it gives me the pilot bush that can be unscrewed, whereas the other one is absolutely solid and almost part of the casting on the Amal. So that's the Amal done. I've shown you these connectors. These are a fantastic thing that I discovered on eBay. They're really tough for when you are trying and doing proof of concept machines like this before I solder and heat shrink and then encapsulate with more heat shrink. But yeah, let's crack on with another job. Okay, this is by no means a video showing you how a Bones system works, but one of the beauties of my friend Bones Farmer system is that there is an aperture here that shows when this is at the correct before top dead center measurement. A line aligns with this peephole here, just above this socket hex key here, and you simply unscrew the things and just tweak the timing. That is static timing, and obviously, like all electronic ignition systems, unlike the original Bantam ignition system, this has a dynamic curve built into the CDI, which is mounted underneath my petrol tank. And you can see here that obviously at some point I've been experimenting with the timing. I just thought I'd show you that, because if my carburettor doesn't sort out, and I suspect very heavily through experience that it will be sorted with the change of carburettor, I'm going to take a very close look at the timing of my Bones system. Now, clearly, like Bones, like any engineer, he cannot facilitate or enable if the crank pin has twisted so the Woodruff key is out of sync with where the engineers think before top dead center would be. But I've checked mine and it's all good. So I'm now going to take the bike off my Sealy bike lift, roll her out into the sun. It's already 23 degrees here and it's not 11 o'clock. What a change the UK weather has had over the last couple of days. We've got an incoming week of good weather, which means that I'll either get a lot of riding done, or I'll find the time on an evening to come into the garage and do my other jobs. But let's crack on and see how she starts with that new Amal 626 Premier carburettor on. After a half mile there, half mile back road test, and she definitely started better with the Amal Premier carburettor with patina, third kick, fourth kick. However, there was hesitance there. Now I've checked the timing and I've checked the colour of my plug, B7ES NGK, and she's dark. She's dark and wet, which can indicate two things. But what I'm going to do as a quick test fix is actually drop the needle one notch. So that basically means moving the clip up on the needle. A lot of people get, like they do with the two-stroke mix, I've always found 33-1 works for me with a Bantam, but a lot of people look at the manual and don't realise that actually to get good air to fuel mix, and that's what the carburettor's main function is, isn't it, is it's only a starting point. So if you have to move the carburettor away from standard configuration, either on the main jet or the needle or any other variable, maybe a cutaway, I'm using a 3.5 inch cutaway on this concentric, it's nothing to lose any sleep over. I've known people with large English twins actually have different settings, and even gone as far as shimming components like the needle to get halfway between notch 1 and notch 2, between the left carburettor and the right carburettor. So bear that in mind, don't get overly obsessed around it. And to be frank with you, and again it's down to individual preference, I prefer a plug my fuel's leaking out the bowl. Why would it not? I prefer a slightly darker plug. Wow. Okay, so that straight away, look at that. That's an example of a workshop hiccup, you might say. The clip, whilst in the needle, whilst the needle was in a clip, the clip was 3/4 of the way down the needle. It wasn't actually in the groove. So for this one, gosh, my eyes are bad. Doesn't age creep upon you rather cruelly? So I've 1, 2, 3 clips, and I'm going to put it on the very, with my main needle, I'm going to put it on the very top clip of the needle. Thus dropping the needle. I hope that makes sense. It's all around how gradiated this is, this needle. It's actually tapered, and by putting it on the top notch, you're actually dropping the needle within the slide. So we'll just replace that, and then we'll give a one last run before it's time to go to a friend's barbecue. So that was my Sunday morning in the workshop. So we swapped carburetors. When I swapped carburetors, I discovered that the inner cable inside the carburetor top hat had frayed, and there were 2 strands of wire. But not only that, the needle on the clip had basically come undone, and I tried to reseat and trim the inner cable, reseat the needle on the correct clip, which, as I said to you, I put it on the topmost clip of the needle, therefore dropping the needle, and I couldn't get the inner cable to smoothly, fluid is a bad word, isn't it? It's physical. Come up and down. So I thought, do you know what? I've robbed Patina's carburetor. Let's rob Patina's throttle cable and throttle assembly. When I did do that, and I put the needle on the top groove of the needle, she went first kick. She's never done that, and she rode with ferocity. And who had a crazy idea of putting a D14 engine into a D1 frame? And I left my garage and started to leave the village that I live in, and the back end fishtailed quite aggressively, and I lost all drive. And I initially thought it was the gearbox. I thought, oh crikey, the centre nut, or something's gone catastrophically wrong with the gearbox, but it hadn't. And what had happened, quite simply put, is that the split link on the chain had given way and my chain had split. So if I seem a little bit red in the face, if I seem more out of breath than normal, it's because it's 27 degrees out there this Sunday midday, and I've pushed my bike back about a mile, and I've sorted, no doubt about it, I've sorted the starting, I've sorted the timing, I've sorted the removal of the workshop fuel tank, and now I've got to go, not today, because I've got to get ready for a friend's and family barbecue this afternoon, but I've got to find the appropriate split link in my split link box and replace that. But certainly from a timing point of view, a starting point of view, I've got some throttle cables, D14B175 throttle twist grip cables to order, but I've made significant progress. So I think this is update 3 on the Green Laner. Hopefully my next update will be split links fitted. I do apologise, I make my own control cables. Thanks. Check petesbikes.co.uk out. It's where I get all of my control cable and my rubber components, but he's also got some excellent, it's got about 200 bikes for sale. They're not all listed on the website, so if you don't see the bike of your dreams or the bike that you're interested in, or maybe a part, Pete's got thousands of new old stock parts, give petesbikes.co.uk a check out. He's certainly worth checking out. So I'll make the control cable. This week is going to be stunning weather, so I plan to ride most evenings, meet up with friends for a drink, not necessarily attend bike meets, that's not my thing anymore. But my next update should be a riding video of those green lanes. Perhaps I can do what I was intending to do today next weekend. Thanks for watching, and if you like these workshop updates, please hit the subscribe button below, or even the like button. Costs you nothing, and it encourages me to set up a camera, spend money on expensive audio equipment and tripods, and hopefully you get as much enjoyment out of these videos as I do. Thanks for watching. Ride safe.